Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be recommending you guys some books that are based off of Grimm fairy tales. But before we go ahead and get on into the books, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down the description box below for links to all of my social medias. So the inspiration for this video actually came because I am reading For the Wolf by Hannah Witten, which is self-proclaimed as a Red Riding Hood retelling. So I decided to pick up my complete copy of Grimm's fairy tales and read the original Red Riding Hood. So I did that last night, even though I'm like 75% of the way through For the Wolf. But I wanted to kind of find some books that were based on Grimm fairy tales and were remakes or retellings of Grimm fairy tales. I enjoy a good retelling. I don't really like them anymore any less than original content. I'm a consumer of stories, but I do like seeing how authors kind of like spin original stories and make them new. So I'm going to go through some books that I have read that are based only on Grimm fairy tales and are retellings that I enjoyed. And then I'm going to talk about some books that I haven't read that I want to read. And then you guys can tell me if you have read them and if they're worth it. So the first is a series that is pretty obvious and I feel like everybody is familiar with, and that is the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. So these are 4 different books that are based off of 4 different Grimm fairy tales, and it takes place in a sci-fi setting. The first book is Cinder, and this is based off of Cinderella. We follow a little cyborg, and then we have Scarlet, which is based off of Little Red Riding Hood. And in this book, the main character is Little Red Riding Hood, and the wolf is kind of like a bioengineered villain type thing. And then we have Cress, which is based off of Rapunzel, and she is secluded in this kind of, I guess, spaceship or satellite that's orbiting around this planet, and she has to get rescued. And then we have Winter, which is based off of Snow White. And I'm blanking on the exact premise of this book right now. But these are really cute stories, and all of the characters do come together at the end. So it's a fun YA sci-fi series that has a great cast of characters, a lot of humor, and you can see those original elements and inspirations from the original fairy tales. Next, we have House of Salt and Sorrow, which is a YA fantasy horror. And this is based off of the Grimm fairy tale, The 12 Dancing Princesses, which I had never heard of before and is actually not in my copy of Grimm fairy tales. And I looked it up to make sure that it was a Grimm fairy tale, and my research said that it was. It was a German folk tale that was included in their collection. So I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. But in this book, we're following a main character, and she lives in this house on the sea in this huge manor. She's all of these sisters, and slowly these sisters are dying one by one, going from oldest to youngest, and she's technically next. And the part that deals with the 12 dancing princesses is because in the fairy tale, these princesses go out at night and dance and dance and dance and come back the next day and like hide what they've been doing. And in this book, there is an element where our main character does that. She gets all dolled up and all dressed up and sneaks out and goes to this party to dance and kind of find out what's going on with her sisters and this haunting of her lakeside manor. So there's just that one element that is inspired by the Grimm fairy tale. It's definitely not, I would say, a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, but you can definitely see the inspiration. By the way, I love this book. It's so creepy. It's so good. Highly recommend. Next is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This is an adult standalone fantasy, and it is loosely based off of Rumpelstiltskin. And it follows a girl named Miriam, and she is the daughter of a man who is not very good with finances. And basically, he puts the family into poverty. And Miriam, it turns out, is very thrifty with money, and she's very smart and economical. And there is this, like, I don't want to say realm, but it's kind of like a fairy realm. And on the other side of, you know, the human realm and where her village is, and there's this fairy king that is just known to be ruthless and heartless. And he sees that Miriam every day is able to take what her family has, go to the market, and turn more gold. So he thinks that it's like magic, not that she's just really smart and knows how to be a businesswoman. So he comes to her and basically gives her no ultimatum, gives her a bag of coin and says, you have to increase this, do what you do, give me more money, make me more money, or bad things will happen. And so she does it. She takes his money and she's able to increase it every single time. And he says, if you're able to do this so many times, then I'll make you my queen. And she does, and he makes her his queen, which isn't necessarily a reward. He whisks her away to this fairy realm, and we kind of slowly learn exactly about this fairy realm, what's going on with it, why this king is the way that he is, why they are so mean and ruthless. And it has to do with this demon-like villain that the fairy king has been fighting. So there's way more to the story. There's lots of perspectives. It's definitely a good winter read because it takes place in a setting that's really, really snowy, cold, and icy. I do have a full review for this book. I'll link it up into the cards. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I just didn't absolutely love this book, but it is very atmospheric and an interesting take on the idea of Rumpelstiltskin. Next, we have For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. Like I said earlier, this was described as a Red Riding Hood retelling, and really the only thing that is reminiscent of Red Riding Hood is that she wears a red cloak. Her name is Redaris, but they call her Red, and she goes into the forest and she is forced to live with this wolf. That's really not a lot like the original fairy tale. In my opinion, this is way, way closer to Beauty and the Beast than it is Red Riding Hood, but Beauty and the Beast isn't a Grimm fairy tale, so I didn't include it. The only, I guess, similarities between this and Red Riding Hood is we have our main character, whose name is Redaris. They call her Red, and she wears a red cloak, and she went off into the woods to meet this wolf. And that's really where the similarities end. Most of the story does take place in this dark, dark wood. The wolf is actually a man, and there was some issues with the translation of the language. He's actually a warden of the forest, but it's very similar in their language to the word wolf, so it just got a little bit convoluted over time. So there's really not a wolf. It's just this man who kind of keeps the forest, the wilder wood. And most of the story does take place in this deep, dark wood. In this culture, all second daughters, of which Red is one, are sacrificed to this wolf in order to possibly bring their kings back. But what we learn is that the kings are actually being held captive, and all the things that this culture, this country thought that they knew about the Wilderwood, the wolf, and the kings is actually all wrong. So I am almost done with this book, so I will be reviewing it, so stay tuned for that. Okay, guys, so those are all of the Grimm Fairy Tale book retellings that I have read. So I have a couple that I want to talk about that I'm really interested in reading. And the first one is The Claiming of Sleeping Beauty by Anne Rice. This is obviously Sleeping Beauty retelling. And this book, I think she wrote it under another pen name. And I have been thinking about reading this book, this series, for years and years and years. And what I am hesitating on is the fact that it is, I think, mostly an erotic story. So I just read Interview with the Vampire again. It is one of my favorite books of all time. I thought that when I was a teenager. It was reconfirmed when I was an adult. But I've also read Anne Rice's Wolf Chronicles, and I thought it was garbage, and I unhauled it. So I don't know if I should read this series. I'm not someone that is into erotica, but it's Anne Rice. So I'm thinking I might just try it, and I can always DNF it. But this is like an erotic spin, like I said, on Sleeping Beauty, where Sleeping Beauty is not awoken with a kiss per se, she's awoken with sexual initiation. And the prince's reward for waking up Sleeping Beauty is her complete and utter submission to him. So I have heard that this is like a precursor to 50 Shades of Grey, which was a huge DNF for me. So it just sounds like a really different take on Sleeping Beauty if you think about Sleeping Beauty. So I might give it a go at some point. You guys will have to let me know if any of you guys have read it. Next is Girls Made of Snow and Glass by Marissa Basherdoust. This is a Snow White retelling, and I saw this at my used bookstore one day, and I should have picked it up because when I went back, it was gone, and this is another one that has been on my radar for a while, and I think it's a standalone as well. But in this book, we're following a teenager named Mina, and Mina's father is a magician, and Mina has always known that she's different. She's never felt love, she's never felt her heartbeat, and what she doesn't know is that her father actually removed her heart and replaced it with one of glass. Eventually, Mina moves to this new castle called White Spring Castle, and as soon as she sees the king, she decides that she wants to make him fall in love with her beauty, so that she will finally experience love and adoration. The only catch to all of this is that Mina will become a stepmother upon marrying the king. I honestly really don't know where the Snow White retelling aspects of this book come in. It really doesn't even sound that much like Snow White. That's just what it's been compared to. So if any of you guys have read it, you'll have to let me know. And lastly, we have another Red Riding Hood retelling, and that is Girl in Red by Christina Henry. And I picked up this book a while ago used. It's like not even in good condition for a couple of dollars because I've wanted to read a Christina Henry book for the longest time because she is known for writing dark fairy tale retellings. And if any of you guys watched my September wrap up, I talk about The Horseman, which is her newest publication. I tried to read and I DNF'd it. I did not like it at all. So I am so loath to pick this book up because once I read a book by an author for the first time and I do not like it, it puts a bad taste in my mouth for any other works by that author. And I was like, crap, I own Girl in Red. But I have had people tell me that this book is really good. So maybe The Horseman was just a one-off. But this book takes a sci-fi spin on Little Red Riding Hood. It's following a world that has been through something known as the crisis, which is kind of like a pandemic, and there are all of these quarantine stations set up, and people that go to these quarantine stations really don't have that much of a chance of survival as anyone else. There is destruction and disease in these places, so our main character is trying to survive on the own in the woods because she doesn't want to get killed and she doesn't want to be subjected to dying in a quarantine camp. But there are things that lurk out in the woods, and it's not just, wolves per se. It is soldiers, men in uniform. I don't know in this book if they're zombie-like creatures because it's a pandemic book. I don't know. But there's all of these evil things lurking in this forest. So my understanding is that we're following this main character as she's just trying to survive this world. Okay, you guys, that is it for some Grimm fairy tale retellings that I really enjoyed or want to read. So definitely let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, or if you have any good recommendations. And I do plan on doing some other videos about some different types of retellings that I really enjoyed. And I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye.